I'm just going to share a few of my thoughts before we throw things open for questions. So we've now seen in multiple media reports that we expect that at some point later today, Doug Ford will be providing information to the people of Ontario about what the next phase or the first phase of this version of Ontario's reopening will look like. So I wanted to provide some guidance, advice to Doug Ford and his team about what Ontario Liberals, following the science, believe today's announcement should include and should focus on. But before I share that, I just want to say the last 15 months in Ontario and across Canada have been brutally difficult for the families of this province. There has been so much sacrifice and so much suffering and so much tragic loss of life that I know how difficult it's been. I think we are all feeling that if we are just a little bit more patient, if we are just a little bit more diligent, that we are far closer, hopefully, to the end of this pandemic ordeal than we are to the beginning. And I know it's not easy to hear those words because we all want everything to return to a new normal. We want to build that new normal together, but we are so close. I am just urging Ontarians to hang on just a little bit longer, to follow the very best scientific advice, because we are all supposed to be in this together and we will get through it. So today, when we hear Doug Ford talk about how he intends to reopen Ontario after what I know has been an extremely lengthy and frankly unnecessary, brutal third wave here in this province, there are a couple of things that I really think he needs to share with us and focus on. Number one, Doug Ford has to make it crystal clear that he is listening to the science. I've been saying this, the other opposition leaders have been saying it, people right across this province have been saying it for months. It's time for politicians to get out of the way. It's time for people who are whispering in Doug Ford's ears, his buddies, his lobbyists, his campaign team, to get out of the way and follow the advice coming from the science table, advice that we read about and we hear about, and we know far too many times in this pandemic, Doug Ford has ignored. That's why this third wave was far tougher and far longer than it needed to be. So I'm urging Doug Ford, follow the science. As a priority, at the very least today, let's hear that outdoor activities that are being pursued safely and responsibly will be allowed to reopen immediately. Now, we hear this in media reports that we're going to see that. The funny part to me, I will share with you, is that just 3 days ago, earlier this week, Doug Ford had the chance to support and agree to the opposition motion that was brought forward that would have made that happen right away. Earlier this week on Monday, he said no. Here we are on Thursday, and it's not just me talking about this, not just opposition parties talking about this. This is what Doug Ford's own science table has been calling for a number of weeks. So number one, follow the science. Number two, let's get going with outdoor activities at a minimum, starting urgently. A couple of other things to keep in mind as we reopen and as we build a recovery that's going to work for everybody, not just the select few, but everybody. We know that small businesses have been battered brutally for now more than a year. As Doug Ford plots the next number of days, weeks, and months for Ontario's reopening and recovery, it truly has to be a recovery that is led by small business. We can no longer afford to be in a world where Doug Ford shows preferential treatment to big box retailers and large corporations only. We need our small businesses in communities right across Ontario, main streets everywhere, to have the full support of the government, the full support of everyone in this province, so that they can get their employment back up, that they can earn the kind of income they need to support themselves and their family and be the leading edge of our economic recovery. Number two, we know, independent analysis show this, you all know, that women have been forced to leave the workforce during this pandemic in record numbers. Many people talk about there being a she-cession, and they're right. We will not get Ontario back onto a strong economic footing until we've figured out how to end the she-cession and get every single woman who has the talent and the capability, as they all do, who has the desire to get back into the workforce, to be able to do so, having the peace of mind knowing that if they're raising kids, those kids are going to be taken care of and have the very best start in life. A number of days ago, I released the Ontario Plan for Childcare, $10 a day licensed universal childcare. We call it Care for Every Child. That's exactly the kind of plan that Doug Ford should be urgently working to deliver, so those moms in particular can get back into the workforce and can stay in the workforce, build their careers, support themselves, their families, our community, and our province. And that is one of the best ways to make sure that our economic recovery is successful and sustained. All of this and more, testing capacity needs to come up. And we also need to know, and I say this not just as a politician, but as a man a husband and a father who's raising with his wife, our two young daughters who attend a publicly funded elementary school here in York Region. This 12-month whipsaw effect of schools opening, then closing, there being last minute notice, both on closures and openings, that has to end. Moms and dads, teachers, frontline education workers, and the students themselves need to have clarity. We need to hear from Doug Ford and his government about exactly what we're going to be seeing over the next number of weeks for the balance of this school year, over the summer months, and preparing for September's reopening of schools. So I'm looking forward to hearing all of this because this is exactly what the people of Ontario need. Follow the science, reopen outdoor activities safely and responsibly right away, lead with a small business first recovery, support women to get back into the workforce so we end the recession and build a real economic recovery that's good for everyone. Let's get it right on schools. Doug Ford's got to listen to the people who work on the front lines in education. He hasn't had a real conversation with them in over a year. That has to stop. We can do this. Ontario can do this, but we're only going to do it right if Doug Ford belatedly understands exactly how to do his job properly. I have said consistently, I don't believe Doug Ford has the competence or the capacity to lead this province, and that is still true. But I am an optimist by nature, and I have a hopeful and ambitious outlook for Ontario's future. We're all in this together, and if we get it right today and we get it right in the next number of weeks, there's nothing that we can't accomplish together. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Okay, just a reminder to please raise your hand using the Zoom function or write to the chat if you have a question. And the first question is from Richard Southern from 680 News.
Stephen, how are you today?
Great, thanks, Richard. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks. We talked to Restaurants Canada yesterday, and they were upset that they hadn't been contacted by the Premier's office regarding the reopening plan. I was wondering what you thought about that. I mean, you think they should be contacting stakeholders?
You know, Richard, I finished off my introductory comments by talking about how I'm an optimist by nature and I'm hopeful and ambitious for Ontario's future. I hear things like this, and this has been a consistent theme, not just from restaurant owners, but right across our economy and our society now for more than a year. And it makes it really hard to be optimistic. I've been in government. I've served in 2 senior portfolios inside cabinet. It makes absolutely no sense that we get to this stage when we know we're moving in this direction. We're going to hear from Doug Ford today that key parts of our economy, in particular those who've just been battered so badly, would not have been included in a real discussion up until the point where Doug Ford's going to say something today. It's inexcusable incompetence at this point. So look, I'll say it. I want to remain optimistic. I urge Doug Ford, I urge his government, pick up the phone, talk to people on the front lines, people who run restaurants, people who manage and run our schools, our hospitals, all of it. It's not that hard to pick up the phone proactively if you have an open and willing heart to do so, to get this right. They've not done this consistently for 15 months, but we are so past the point of being able to accept half-hearted half measures. They just got to do it right. They just got to do it right.
Stephen, do you think schools should be reopening on June 2nd if the stay-at-home order does indeed lift on that day?
So look, I will tell you, as I said in my comments, my daughter's grade 8, grade 4. I knew this already, but I certainly learned it during the pandemic. There will never be anything that replaces physical in-person learning in a safe and healthy classroom with our kids in smaller class sizes, by the way, being taught by teachers, early childhood educators, other support staff throughout the school who are motivated and energized and properly compensated. That is the ideal. That's how you build a good society, and it's how you build a great future for our kids and a strong economy at the same time. So I want my kids back in school, but the schools have to be safe and the classrooms have to be safe and healthy. And here we are now. It's been months since this third wave was really upon us, and this last lockdown really hit us. And I've been talking to people who work on the front lines in education. They haven't heard from this government. They haven't heard from Doug Ford. So what would be different in our schools if they open on June 2nd versus where we were in February or where we were in March or where we were in last September? The answer is virtually nothing. So like, I know there's a lot of spin coming from Doug Ford and his team about education. As a parent, as a guy who's got kids in the system, they're lying about what they've accomplished in publicly funded education. So I want my kids back. I want them back tomorrow, but they have to be safe. The teachers have to be safe. The frontline education workers have to be safe. Better ventilation, smaller class sizes, outdoor learning where it's possible, when it's possible. All of this can be done, but you have to make the effort. And Doug Ford, so far, especially in education, just doesn't seem to care about making the effort.
Okay, Richard says he has another question, so I'm going to put him back into the queue.
No problem.
I just wanted to know what you thought. I mean, this is the first time, 3 o'clock this afternoon, the first time we're going to see the premier in like a week, and he's only been in question period twice in the past 3 weeks. What do you make about the all of a sudden absence of Doug Ford, Stephen?
Doug Ford's already running for re-election. This is all campaign. This is all tactics. This is all politics. It's all based on what his campaign team and his polling is showing. Here's a classic example for you. I said this in my remarks earlier. This past Monday, 3 days ago, there was a motion in the legislature brought forward by the opposition regarding reopening outdoor activities. We voted for it. I believe the Green Party voted for it. Doug Ford and his government had the chance to support it and move forward. They said no. It's now 3 days later, and we hear, according to media, that he's going to reopen outdoor activities, which is great. I want him to do that. But what's changed in the last 3 days? I'll tell you. As a political person, I'll tell you. In the last 3 days, Doug Ford's campaign team has been polling, and the polls are telling them what to do. So these strategic absences, this missing in action routine, it's about putting him into hiding because his team knows Doug Ford is a liability for their party. That's their business. But as an Ontarian, he's a liability for our province. He doesn't have the capacity or the competence to do what's right. So they've put him into hiding. They've put him into the witness protection program because they're more focused on getting reelected and saving their political skins than they are on you and I and our families.
Great stuff. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other questions on the line. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.